in many countries like mine, many young people are more and more keen to support and vote for populist parties. So my question is, what is your recipe to bring this younger generation back to a more progressive vision, not only of your country, but also of the whole European Union?
I want to get back to the first question of Max. If you allow, I want to tell you something about my own life. I'm born in 1955. I'm a person of the 20th century. I'm more or less born in the mid of that century. And the first half of the 20th century is that half of Verdun. 7 million dead people in the First World War, 55 million killed, soldiers, civilians, 6 million killed Jews in the extermination camps of the Nazis. And I'm born 10 years after the end of the Second World War, 6 years after the creation of the Federal Republic of Germany. And my life in that second half of the 21st century was always more. More peace, more stability, more wealth, more growth, more education, more rights, more freedom of movement, more, every day more. And that was linked for my whole generation to Europe. If I'm looking to the young generation in some of the member states in the southern part of Italy, for example, or in Greece, or in Spain, in Portugal, born at the end of the 20th century or in the early years of the 21st, their life is every day a little bit less. Less money, less chances, less education, more problems for, if it is more problems and less chances. And this is, in the eyes of a lot of those people, as we said, the result of Europe. The question we have to raise is that the truth? Is it the result of Europe? No, it is not the result of the existence of the European Union or a single market or whatever. It is the result of a development which is not just and fair. My parents, for example, if you allow, I tell that story, I told it often during my time as a group chairman in the European Parliament or as a president of the European Parliament. My parents were asked by the government, these post-war governments in Italy, De Gasperi, for example, or Spaak in Belgium, or Adenauer in Germany, De Gaulle here in France. The whole generation, by the way, if you allow that I add it, that was a generation of men and women who lived 2 world wars, not a single one, 2. Adenauer, De Gaulle was a fighter here in Verdun, and he was a general in the Second World War. Adenauer was the mayor of Cologne already in the First World War. They lived 2 world wars. That was the generation of the first half of the 20th century with all these experiences. And they asked, after the Second World War, to the generation of my parents, that was the generation of reconstruction of these countries, to sacrifice everything. My parents, my father was 60 years old when he won for the first time in his life to a holiday. 60 years. 5 children, my sisters and my brothers, and myself, and they were asked to sacrifice everything. They paid for everything, they worked longer than we worked, they had less income than I had. They paid for the school, they paid for the school books, they paid for the university of my brothers and my sisters. They paid for everything. And they had nothing for themselves. And why they did it? Because the government said it is for your children. It is for the better of your children. And visibly, it was for the better of their children. That was the life I described. Every day, more chances. And these parents said, that was, I could, when that sentence on the Sunday afternoon with coffee and coke was told in the house of my parents, I started my private revolution. That was the sentence, you should live better than we did. That was this. Ihr sollt es mal besser haben als wir, the Germans here know all that. In all German house, it was the same. You should live better than we did. I couldn't, it was for me difficult word because it was every Sunday afternoon the same. But I lived better than they did. My life was much better. And now I'm in office as a president of a European institution, for example, and now as a party leader in Germany. And my generation in office is asking now in some of the member states, in your member state, for example, or in Greece, to parents to pay more taxes, to work longer, to get less pensions, to pay for that service of the country, to contribute to this, to accept every day another sacrifice. And for what? For banks to save a bank system and their children are unemployed. That's the reason why these populists are exploiting. What is the answer we as Europeans have to give? It is to make Europe more balanced, more just, to introduce rules to an outraged banking speculating system, to make more rules in the European Union against that, for that fight against tax evasion, tax fraud, to introduce more common rules, which are not common rules also exclusively for ordinary citizens, but also for multinational companies. This is a question of social coherence and balance. And if we rebalance it, if we have, for example, an investment strategy in Southern Europe, creating employment, I was always, as a president of the European Parliament, in favor that those enterprises, let's say in Greece, who invest and employ in the same moment young people should have a tax privilege, for example, or another privilege, another support. And yeah, you remember, we did it in, we argued in the election campaign, instead to discuss, for example, permanently, if we should exclude Greece from the Eurozone, which is in my eyes not an incentive for investment. If you tell to an investor, you invest today in euros, but if tomorrow the reimbursement and the benefit is calculated in drachma, I know nobody who will go to such a country. So predictability and sustainability in strategies is also an element of economic success. That's more or less a very long answer to a short question. Excuse me.
One of the most important dangers for the EU is the populism and the populist politicians like Viktor Orbán and Kaczynski. How could we protect the European dream from them? Thank you.
By strengthening the opposition in Hungary. One of the biggest misunderstandings is often that we could change a country from outside. That's not possible. We should not in no way accept his speeches, his strategies, where he is crossing the red lines. We should clearly say stop. I think the Commission is prepared to do so with the Polish government, with the Hungarian government. But one thing is clear. The big advantage of people like Viktor Orbán or the Kaczynski people is they are a member of a union based on common values. They signed the treaties. The country ratified the Lisbon Treaty. So the country is, as a full-fledged member of the European Union, obliged to respect the rules. As a full-fledged member of the European Union, obliged to respect the rules of the Lisbon Treaty. And whenever, and this is within the Lisbon Treaty, there is a suspicion, there is a kind of doubt that the rules are respected entirely by a member state, there is a procedure. And that procedure is clearly described in that treaty, also ratified by Hungary or Poland. And then the Commission starts in inquiries and auditions and speeches. And already starting this, the same government obliged to respect that rules attacks the European Union to interfere in domestic affairs. And this is always successful. In previous times we were ruled by Moscow, now we are ruled by Brussels. So this is completely unacceptable. Hungary or Poland are member states who signed that treaty in which the Commission has that rule. To blame then the Commission applying to the common also Hungarian and Polish rules to interfere in domestic affairs is completely unacceptable and should be stopped. But we must raise the question, why are they successful in raising that point? They are giving us lessons. They want to rule our country from outside. Because that was already discussed in answering to previous questions, this feeling not to be treated on equal footing, not to be accepted on the same level, to be humiliated by a foreign anonymous power. This is a feeling which a lot of people in Europe across all the countries have, and we must take this very serious. And therefore you can't change countries, in my eyes, from outside. You can try to influence that they stick to the rules. But we must strengthen with all our means those Hungarians, those Polish, as I saw very encouraging Sunday, thousands and thousands of people in Warsaw on the streets in a rally against that government. We must tell them, you are not alone, we are with you, Europe is backing you. That's very important also for the Hungarian opposition.